Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories, a podcast designed to inspire single parents. Here you'll find resources from self-care to finances to parenting and everything in between. Discover what it takes to thrive. Let the stories inspire you to what is possible. And hello and welcome to Single Parent Success Stories. Today's guest is Sari Goodman, coming to us from Los Angeles, California. She's a mom of two. She also has been helping parents of young children with their parenting challenges and sharing in their successes and joys for many years as a teacher, school principal, and now a full-time certified parent educator and coach. She basically helps parents who want their children to grow to be good humans without feeling weighed down by worry and guilt. Welcome, Sari. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be able to help parents feel strong and confident.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So please share with us, who is Sari in your own words?
Well, let's see. Sari is a person who's always wanted to be a teacher forever and ever. My parents told me that even when I was a toddler, I would play school and I would be the teacher. And then to my younger siblings' frustration, I was their teacher. And then I did. I became a teacher. I became a teacher of children with special needs, focusing on children on the autism spectrum. And I did that, and I wanted to expand my reach, so I became a school administrator. And I did that for many, many years. And as the years went by, I found myself working more and more with parents, more than with students and teachers. Parents had questions and didn't really know who to ask. And through all my experience with kids and adults, and I taught at the college level also. I had a lot of experience with adults, and so I started counseling parents, not as a counselor, but as a resource for them when they had questions. I can't get my child to do homework. My child has tantrums. My child won't brush their teeth. My child's afraid of the dark. You know, those kinds of really intense questions that are not simple with simple answers. And so I said, gee, I have all this training for teaching and educating. I need more training to really make sure that I'm helping parents in the right way. So I went back to school, got certified as a parent educator and coach. And I'm using all that knowledge and decided that there's just a need for parents to have somebody to call up and ask a question. It's not therapy. Teachers don't have the time anymore. Everybody's stressed. So who do you go to? And so now people can come to me. That's why I'm here. I want to share more with more parents. The more parents I can share with, the better, in my opinion.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you for providing such a valuable service and being that outlet for parents when they are seeking answers. What makes you happy?
What I'll tell you, spending time outside with friends and family makes me the happiest. I like to hike. I belong to a hiking group, a bunch of women. We go traveling and we hike. So that's really wonderful. And read every moment. Sometimes I feel guilty, right? I want to sit and read. And then I'm thinking, well, I have to do laundry and I have to do this and I have to do that. And I have to try to make myself feel not guilty for sitting down with a book.
Oh, speaking of books, what's your favorite book?
Wow, the last one that I read that was really great was The Midnight Library.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell what it's about because it's going to give it away, but I really like mysteries a lot. So The Midnight Library, and then The Paris Apartment is a really great mystery if you like mysteries.
Mm-hmm. Sounds interesting.
Hmm?
Awesome. What would you say is your superpower?
My superpower is being able to I guess I'm the people. I consider myself the people whisperer, where I can see the big picture especially when I'm going into houses. That's what I do. I go into homes and I observe and I see the big picture, and I have a innate understanding in it. I think it came from my training in going into classrooms where I was helping teachers, and they would say, I'm having these issues and this is a problem. And I could walk into a classroom and with a very few minutes, I could see the big picture and say, okay, here's what's happening, here's what's really happening, and here's what you need to do. Because I think when people are in the middle of raising children, teaching students, you're so focused on what you're doing that it's really hard to see the bigger picture of what's going on. And you need someone like me, like a fly on the wall, that can say, okay, I'm seeing the big picture, and let's make these adjustments. So that's me.
And what were some of the, like, do you see common themes by, when you say I see a big picture in classrooms that you go to?
Yes, when I went to classrooms, a lot of times it was the teacher missing the antecedent, what happened before. Your attention would be drawn to a misbehavior or a misunderstanding, or a child not understanding what's being taught, or a child getting frustrated. And that's what you would see, but you didn't notice what came before because you were so busy with all the children. Here, you have 30 at least in the classroom. It's really hard to notice. And so I would say, this is what's happening. You're not noticing it because for obvious reasons. And this is what's happening. The child, perhaps is too far back in the classroom and needs to be more forward. We have a tendency when we teach to not look at the child directly in front of us. Sometimes we sit the child who needs a little extra help in the very front, right in front of us. And actually we look over that child. You don't realize it, but you look over them. You look to the side and you look to the back. And so oftentimes the child that needs the most help is right there, and we inadvertently overlook. So I'll say, this child needs to move to the side. Those kinds of things. I do that at homes too. Sometimes the environment just needs to be changed. Your child might have a ton of stuffed animals and then have trouble sleeping. And I say, there's just too many things on that bed. Let's change that environment. Right. And because you get used to seeing things the way they are. And I think, it's like if I have a pile or I have a mess in my house, I tend not to see it anymore. It's been there so long. But someone else walking in will obviously see it. And the same thing happens when I go to people's houses, is they might not notice that there's 50 stuffed animals on a bed because they just don't see them anymore. They've been there so long. And I'm going, wow, there's a lot of stuffed animals on that bed. Let's move them.
So you provide a fresh set of eyes on the situation.
Yes, a fresh set of eyes, exactly.
Kind of looking like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
From an observer, from somebody who is not there all the time, get a different perspective on things. So
yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Earlier when we were talking, we talked about what are some of the tactics that you can share that parents can use to keep them from feeling judged?
Yeah, I think that's a big stressor for parents is, am I being a good parent? And how do I know if I'm being a good parent? And it causes a lot of stress. And I think that I felt that way as a parent when my kids were younger also, is what's our assessment? Who's judging us? Well, our children are judging us, by their reactions, but where are we getting our information from? And we get our information from what we think other people are thinking about our parenting. My child is crying, my child's having a meltdown. What are other people going to think of me? And it's really very stressful. And when you're stressed, it's really hard to parent a stressed child, right? It's stress upon stress. But it's naturally inhuman. We make judgments all the time. We make judgments on models and dress, and in the media. It's very much a part of who we are as humans. And so it's hard to combat that feeling of being judged. But if we can avoid it or mitigate it, then we're not as stressed as parents and we have more bandwidth. And so one of the things to think about is really acknowledging that maybe they're not judging you. You might be thinking people are judging you, but maybe they're not. And I find that people are so focused on themselves, especially when you're with children. You're focused on yourself and your children. Really, do they have the time to actually judge you? Maybe not. Maybe you're overthinking and people really aren't judging you. And so that's one strategy, is when you're feeling judged, is maybe I'm really not feeling judged. Maybe I'm just fine. Thank you very much.
You're
And
so right. Yeah.
yeah,
I think we are our own worst judge, and we are
yes,
executioner and performer all wrapped into one. We
yeah,
get to act out our imaginative things, and we would penalize ourselves worse than we would. Like when a friend needs comforting, what kind of language would we use, and how would we speak to that person versus how we speak to ourselves, and judging ourselves for no reason.
right. Be your
Because,
own friend.
yeah, having, and I guess it goes back to how you were growing up, and like, let's say there are a certain set of parameters what a good parent is, and you constantly kind of measuring what am I doing versus what my parents did and how you felt during the process, and like, I'm not measuring up to that standard.
Right. And where did that standard come from? I don't know. Parenting, people say, well, we've been being parents for millennia, and what's the big deal? We can parent, but it's actually much harder to parent today than ever before. The pressures, there's just more. And it is different and it is harder. And that's one of the reasons why my favorite strategy is to find your people, to really find your village and find people with similar values. Find the people who get you, and be very intentional about creating that friendship group, and these are people who will let you vent over and over again, even if it's about the same thing, because when you vent even about the same thing, it's a way of solving problems. It's a way of creating solutions. It's a way of building strategies, and it's just a way of relieving stress. And then it should be back and forth. You give that to your people who are in your group. You do the same thing. I think as parents, if a child is doing something and we're worried about it, your village will allow you to talk about it over and over and over again, and not say, oh, I keep hearing this. Well, you know what? It's a journey, and children just don't snap out of it. Right. And when we talk about it over and over, it's one way of developing different kinds of strategies. I never thought of it that way, and to be the reflection. So you really want to not only find your own village and find your own people who get you, but you also want to give back to those and be available to others to be their village also.
So true. It's goes back to say who you surround yourself with, and getting that support, that you don't have to be there on your own. There are people going through the same things as you are, and having the comfort and having that confidence that you can share and maybe gain some kind of explanation or results or a tool to try as you navigate this journey of parenting.
Right. And if you're feeling lonely and alone, and I think a lot of parents do feel alone in the journey, and I think that's what feels stressful. I think this idea that I might be judged, so I'm not going to say anything, so I'm going to pretend like everything is fine, is like the opposite of trying to find your group. And that's what I think some people are doing, is they're not sharing as readily as maybe they would have in a less judgmental feel of an environment, in a less stressful environment. People are talking about where their children are going to go to college when they're in kindergarten. I belong to a mommy group on Facebook, and one of the mommies said I need a tutor for my kindergartner. And I just really felt so bad that people are feeling that their kindergartners need tutoring, right? Kindergartners need to go outside and play.
I think we're trying to speed up of the concern that you want them prepared for the future, and you want to speed up the learning curve and
right. And that's
steal
how
away their childhood.
Correct. And how stressful is that? Because it doesn't work that way, right? That's not how kids work.
Yes. Yeah, you're so right. So
Yeah.
what is another a trick or tool to try so the parents to keep parents from feeling judged?
Well, one of the things is a sneaky one, and that is to hand out a lot of compliments to other parents and to teachers. And, oh, I noticed your child did the cutest thing, or, oh, my child talked about that lesson. It must have been a lot of fun. I think my child learned a lot. And noticing just other people. And you'd be surprised that sometimes it's almost like a what? I just don't think that we're supportive enough of people. And what happens when you compliment people is they start seeing where they can compliment you. And then it becomes a much more positive, less judgmental, because instead of looking for what's wrong with people, oh, I would never do that. You know, I would never let my child do that. You hear that a ton, right? But if you're giving compliments, wow, your child was so kind. I just saw, I used to do that often as a school principal. When I saw children doing something great, I would call the parent because I didn't want to be that principal that only called when there was a problem. And I remember distinctly one other child sat down and tied a younger child's shoes, just did it. And I called a parent and I said, wow, this was so wonderful. And we have to notice the good. And that's the opposite of being judged, right? When you're judged, you're noticing the bad or the critical. You're being critical. But if we're complimenting, we're noticing the good. And that makes everyone feel better. And people start feeling more positive about you as a parent. Wow, that's just a really nice person. They must be doing something right. And it just switches it. That's why I say it's kind of sneaky.
I like that. Because our life, we are focusing on the negative.
Yeah.
Even when we are in grade school, the teachers, and they correct the paper, they use a lot of red ink and
yes,
always focusing on mistakes, the things that went wrong, and
yep.
Work on your weaknesses. But the good things, we skip them. We don't focus on them. We kind of I take them for granted. And then I called as a generic memory. If I ask you, like, do you remember something amazing? We have a very difficult time recalling the positive memory, but we have a negative memory that we can kind of divulge in very detail because of how, constantly. So I love that tip, complimenting others and looking for things that are working and, saying those things, because oftentimes we stay quiet. So awesome point.
Yeah, we stay quiet. Don't you see that if we're ultra critical about ourselves and then we're ultra critical about other people, then we're raising children to be ultra critical of themselves. And I remember one child that, hi, how are you? What do you like about school? Well, I'm not good in math. I didn't ask that. And wow, a young children's already saying what they're not good at. Well, something's wrong here, right?
Yes.
That's my favorite one.
Engravement also, like at home, probably, if you're not getting the high grade in math, like you constantly be, oh, you're not good at it, you're not good at it, you're not good at it. Guess what's happening? We're programming the young child brain with those
negatives,
disempowering thoughts when and then the child say, oh, parents say I'm not good at it, so why should I bother trying?
Exactly, that happens.
I'm just gonna be who you want me to be. I'm not gonna be good at math.
Yeah, there you go. I'm not good at math. Done. then. So I know. And that's what I like, is to just really encourage people to be much more positive, like surrounding your people, surrounding yourself with people who get you, handing out compliments, enjoying your children, seeing the little wins. I think that parents have different gauges as what's a success and what's not a success, and different for different children's. It's different. So a child who might brush their teeth for the first time on their own, that's a huge win. And you might tell somebody who's not in your, who doesn't get you and is not there, and they'll say, well, what's the big deal? My child's been doing that for 2 years. Well, that was my little win, and I'm going to keep it. So it doesn't matter. And that's, you have to look at all your little wins.
Totally. And you gotta start young, because the older you get, you're just gonna take things for granted, and we always wait for a big breakthrough before we celebrate the little tiny steps. But those are important because we kind of give a little endorphin and a little meaning to our brain, like why are we doing certain thing, by celebrating those tiny little micro steps on a journey. So
really, exactly. Those are the little foundations, and that really teaches children and adults, you don't make the big progress without the little tiny steps and the little tiny wins. Those big things are based on all the small things that came before. We have to recognize them for ourselves. If we recognize those kinds of things, like, wow, my child is doing that, my child just said thank you without me reminding them, that's always a good shocker. Thanks, Mom. I was like, whoa, I didn't remind them. That's a sure win.
awesome. Yes, totally agree with you. And what is another tactic for parents that they can use from feeling judged?
I think I call it recognize the cover up. There's a cover up going on. Other parents are struggling just like you, just like me. I struggled, they struggle, but they're covering it up. They're showing how everything is right. They'll brag about their children's successes and leave off the struggles. They'll say things like, oh, that never happens to me, or I would never let my child do that. That kind of thing. That's a cover up, because the fact is that parenting is hard. I came at this, I was already a teacher when I had my first child, and I thought, oh, I got this down. I have training. And guess what? It was really hard. And yeah, I had some training, but oh my gosh, nothing trained me to be a mom of an infant. I just didn't have that training, and I didn't have the training that went along with it. And the fact is that we're all beginners, and we keep being beginners because our children are one of a kind. There's no book on them. Even though there's a lot of parenting books out there, there's no book on that child. And every time they grow and they get to another stage, we're beginners all over again. And we think we're supposed to be experts at our children all the time, and we're not. So yeah, we make mistakes and we do trial and error. Hopefully we have a lot of tools in our toolbox. That's where I come in, give you lots of options. But we're still beginners, and everyone is. And people are just covering up that struggle and making it sound like, oh yeah, parenting, no big deal. I got this. I don't think so. I think it's a cover up.
I think you're right. And as parents, we wear so many different masks, how we are with children versus how we are with others. And yeah, we don't want to talk about the challenges. We want to make it appear that everything is working. But you're so right that we are such beginners. No matter how many books you read before you become a parent, it's actually, I feel it's like learning on the job. You learn as you go along. It doesn't matter what you read, because it does not apply, because you have this specific situation. And maybe it was working for the person who wrote the book, but you, with your experiences, your emotions, and your approach to life, you're gonna figure it out. What is your way of being a parent, and by doing all those things. And we're always beginners because we're always learning on the spiral of life, about ourselves, about the world, and about our children. And I think our children are greater teachers as they show us
Yes.
different aspects of how we could be better.
Yeah.
How we could be doing things in a different way. So awesome points.
Yeah.
What advice would you give for single parents? I know you are not a single parent yourself, but
No, I'm not a single parent. I have worked with a lot of single parents and worked with this, where children are going back and forth between homes, or single parent who's doesn't have the child is in one home. I think single parents feel judged more and than two parent families. And I don't think it's right. I think that sometimes there's, how do each parent get the right information, and you're dealing with parenting, maybe two different parenting styles in two different homes. So it's very difficult. There's all these extra difficulties and stressors. So my advice would be, for sure, get your village and the people who get you. And don't be afraid to reach out to a parent coach who can just be that extra person in your village that gives you the tools and the strategies. And understand, one of the struggles I deal with often is where a child is going back and forth between homes with different parenting strategies, and the worry that what will happen. And I analogize it to a classroom where a child will have maybe 2 or 3 different teachers who run their classroom very differently, and the child adjusts every time they walk into the different classrooms. And that's what happens also. Children adjust. Children are great. They're strong. They get it. And I think we can trust our children a lot. And that will relieve our stress. I think if we give over some trust and confidence in our children, then we know that we don't have to be so worried all the time that they're going to be really great.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Those are great tools. What do you think is the most important trait to instill in a child?
I think the most important trait is empathy. But I have to caution people that young children don't have empathy. They're very focused on themselves developmentally. The young ones, it's all about me, and that's how they are. But we demonstrate empathy. I know how you're feeling. I know you're upset right now. Do you see how your friend is upset, or you hit your brother and look how upset? And so we teach that kind of seeing how our behavior affects others, and and to start to read emotions, because then we raise children who are empathetic and who give back to the world.
Thank you. I love those examples. Know how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Teaching that to kids. Yes. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to share?
I think that parents, I guess I'll repeat myself, is that parenting is harder now in our contemporary times than it was before. Part of it is social media, and not because our kids are on social media, because we're on social media. Nobody posts the pictures of their kids crying. They post perfect family pictures. And that has a lot to do with our expectations for how we must be perfect. And that it's just not realistic. And I think that's part of the pressure that we put on ourselves as parents. That wasn't necessarily there before. I think that there's just a lot more pressure. What does success mean for children? Do you have to go to Harvard to be considered a success? Or Or can you be just a giving person? Can that be success? Right? Can you be a loving person? Can that be success? And so I think our society is dictating what success is, and we're going along and trying to reach that success. And maybe that's not the right kind of success. Maybe that's not a match for our children.
You're right, because we think success is that external thing that defined by somebody else, but I think success has to come from inside. What do you consider successful, and doesn't have to match society's way of success.
Right.
And define your own, what works in your specific case.
Right. Right. And so then to not be afraid to reach out and ask questions. We should be able to feel comfortable asking questions.
Yeah.
And we should be confident in our struggle. It is a struggle. It's not easy.
Yeah. What kind of what is your most major form of concern, or like when people reach out to you, what are they seeking help with and guidance?
I think one of the biggest is the exhaustion and the overwhelm. Mm-hmm. Where do I start? My child is usually the child is not behaving the way they want, or they're not getting the response they want, or they're worried that their child isn't progressing. Or the school is calling and they're getting emails from the school. What do I do? So it's this kind of overwhelm of not knowing where to start, or using the tools you think are right, using the tools that maybe you think were used by your parents, but they aren't really working. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, but it's not working. And the fact is that you're not your child. Your child has a different personality, and all you need is some extra tools in your toolbox just to make it work, just in a different way. We had a lot of time out when we were in the past, or just different kinds of punishment strategies. That's what I see a lot, is parents are thinking, should I do these punishments? Should I be grounding? Should I be taking things away? And it works temporarily, but it doesn't work in the long run. So we have to look for different strategies.
You're right. Yeah. Sometimes we always focus on corrective action as opposed to encouragement, or leading by example.
Right.
Showing the positive aspects of things, and hopefully they would emulate. And sometimes it takes not just one try, just like you said, being surprised that your child said thank you without you reminding them of that, and recognizing that fact. So thank you so much. If people would love to connect and learn more about you, where would they go?
They should go to my website, www.theparentaledge.com. That's my business, The Parental Edge. I have a newsletter that comes out monthly that I talk about issues that I see are very common, and give solutions and tips. And it just ends up in your email once a month for you to read. It's short. So, because I keep it short, because I know people don't just have a lot of time to read a lot. But I would encourage people to sign up for the newsletter so that you can get just tips and ideas and strategies. That gives a lot of different kinds of strategies that maybe match your child.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we will include everything in episode notes, all the links, so that people can connect directly with you. It's been a pleasure to have you. And any final words?
I think that parents are the most amazing people in the world, and you should be proud of yourself for all of your accomplishments. And I'm so happy to have been invited to be here and be able to help parents.
Yes, thank you. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and knowledge. And I love the services that you provide, because parenting is challenging, and we often find ourselves alone, and hitting a head against the wall. So thank you for providing that service and being that outlet for parents who seek answers. Thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure.